Super, super excited and also massively amused to be stood on this stage here. So many years of being close to INCOSE, knowing a number of the INCOSE folks through my time at Bristol. And life can sometimes give you very strange things that happen. So, for example, my husband and I lived about 10 miles away from each other for our entire lives until we met at sixth form college when we were 18. And I can never quite work out if that was destiny trying to keep us together or to keep us apart. And I have a similar kind of relationship with engineering. So the presentation that I'm giving is completely as myself and not as a representation of the company that I work for. And as Richard said, it's really because they're a very modest and humble organisation, so they don't seek being visible. Although it is quite a large company. We have 120 different nationalities working for us across many parts of the world. So it's an exciting and interesting topic, but not one I can talk about in a public forum. So who are you? Who are yous? It's a kind of grammatically fun thing to notice what we do in different languages, and especially for people who speak multiple languages, noticing how different languages do different concepts, and where do they keep the past, and where do they keep the present, and how do they deal with things like gender and so forth. And one of the things that amuses me a lot is how in different parts of the world, even a simple question about how are you elicits a different answer. So in Kuwait, in Kuwaiti Arabic, how are you, we say shlonik or shlonich, depending if you're male or female. And it basically means, what color are you today? Right, what color are you today? And then the response is effectively to that. And then depending on your gender, you respond in a slightly different way. And so I find even just a simple greeting like that tells us a lot about the models, the mental models, the paradigms that people are holding within their heads. So I've really been wondering, why do we ask, how are you and who are you? Right? To an individual, why do we use the plural form? So who are yous makes more sense if we're talking to a group of people, but who are you? Are is plural, you, often we're meaning the singular. So what is that all about? So I wanted to play with that concept this afternoon. And it so happens that I'll be talking about growth and transformation, which is 2 of the 7 objectives that we've been looking at INCOSE. So, a couple of threads. Magic we've touched on, purpose, it's all about purpose. And I think when we're answering the question, who am I, or who are you, we're thinking about, well, what is my purpose and why am I here? And I don't know how many other people get the sensation that they're actually still 6 years old, it's just their body got older. But I live in that way, and I feel like I'm still the same kid who used to play Lego with my mate Christopher, and who sort of watched Princess Diana's wedding and all of that. It just happens that my body got older. But there we go. And so there's something about our purpose and our search for who am I and what is my identity and why am I here and what do I have to offer? And sometimes that feeling of being an imposter in the workplace, especially the more senior we get, at some point someone's going to work out, I don't know what I'm doing. It's a universal concept, in case any of you didn't know that. We're pretty much all playing that same game. And the more people pretend that they know what they're doing, the more likely it is that they really don't think that they do. So just a little secret for you there. And a piece around transformation, which we talked about, heroism. It's amused me that pretty much every day of the conference we've had, we can be heroes as the entering piece. And I'm going to talk in a moment about journeys and the hero's journey and how we go on growth and transformation journeys as human beings. So you can read those thoughts yourself, but there are so many threads that come together, and I invite you to notice those threads in this presentation and also to pick up on any additional threads, because learning works when we connect ideas and new information to stuff we already know. okay? So it's not about just connecting facts to other facts, it's about making meaning of those for ourselves. So as I share a few stories, I invite you to think about your own stories and how you make meaning of some of the content that I'm going to offer you today. Right, memes. Memes are everywhere. The world of Facebook and Instagram. Instagram's much more popular in the Middle East than Facebook, Twitter and so on. There are pieces that give us these beautiful bits of advice, okay? So be who you needed when you were younger. Well, what if somebody else isn't like you and they don't actually need you to be who you needed when you were younger? I mean, we're all individual, or we're all in different systems. We all have different needs. And it takes courage to grow up and become who you really are. Please put your hands up if you're absolutely certain you know who you really are. Quite, right? It doesn't mean that we're not courageous. It just means it depends what system we're in at that time. So who we are on Monday morning of a conference is a slightly different person to who we are on Thursday afternoon of a conference. Who we are at a funeral is different to who we are at a wedding. So it all depends on the system that we're in. And children in particular are fantastic at adapting. When I was very little and we lived in Yemen, I used to speak quite often with a kind of Pakistani accent, okay? And the reason for that is that I go browner in the sun than my parents do, okay? And so I thought that I must be from the Pakistani group of children. So I used to hang out with the Pakistani children, and I used to speak with a Pakistani accent at school. And my mother didn't know that until she dropped me off at a friend's house for his birthday party, and I got out of the car and stopped speaking like an English person and started speaking with a Pakistani accent, right? And my mother was deeply embarrassed because she thought it would be very offensive. But his family they knew that I always spoke that way when I was with my Pakistani friend, because that's how we Pakistanis speak, right? And I didn't realize at that point, I was about 6, I hadn't realized that your nationality depends on the nationality of your parents. It just wasn't something I realized. So it was a real shock to discover I wasn't from Pakistan, but what can you do? Okay. So some of these things can be quite uplifting memes, but like everything else on Facebook, we shouldn't take them too seriously or believe that they are true, okay? So my recipe for life is not being afraid of myself. I terrify myself regularly, okay? And today you are you, that's true. And then true. I mean, Dr. Seuss, he talks a lot of sense, actually. You are you, that is true. And you are more you than anyone else has ever been. That's also true. In the same way that Brexit means Brexit is true. And, you know, Weetabix means Weetabix. I mean, so many things are true. It doesn't mean that they mean anything. But there we go. So, and then there's a piece around finding out, well, who am I? Perhaps who am I based on my heritage? So I remember spending time, especially as a teenager, feeling like I was the jigsaw piece that was the bit that fitted around the other bits of my family, right? So it seemed like my parents were pretty well defined. My sisters seemed to know kind of who they were. They're younger than me. Younger people always know more than older people, right? And my brother is 10 years younger than me, so he was very clear. So I remember feeling sometimes like I wasn't so much me as the piece that fitted in with the other pieces, and that I sort of would change to fit in with the family, which isn't a bad thing. You know, it can be quite useful to be able to evolve and to fit into different systems and to be kind of, you know, to be able to change in those ways. But there we go. And then a winner is you, because this society that we live in, wherever in the world we live, we have this whole concept of everything being competitive. And I really feel that systems engineering is characterized by collaboration, and that's a really key piece. So a winner is us, perhaps, or if we don't work together, losers are us, is where we are. So, who are you? Actually, who is you would be the grammatically correct question, but I think it is who are you? Who are all the different people that you are at different times of day with different types of people when you're facing different challenges? And how can you be when you're doing systems engineering, so when you're doing elicitation or facilitation or an analysis or whatever it is, how do you get yourself into the optimum state to be really, really effective at that moment in that particular circumstance, that set of systems with which you're in? So, 3 pieces that I'm going to bring to you, 3 models, if you will. One is Talbot and Rooks' work into leadership. It's one of many models of leadership transformation. It's one I found quite useful. And I'll share with you 3 journeys I've been on, 3 learning journeys through my life, and sort of label them with that language as a way of communicating it. If you've never seen it, you can get hold of this from HBR online, and it's quite a useful paper to read. They do a lot of work around personal transformation and also organizational transformation. So being able to work out, well, what is the majority kind of culture and behavior around here, and what does that mean for us as an organization or a society or world? Okay. The second piece I'll be referring to is Mindset by Carol Dweck, which is a very simple and difficult idea. Just recently, are any of you sporty people? Put up your hand up if you're sporty. Okay, put up your hand up if you're not sporty. Like, when did you decide that nonsense? Right? When did you make that decision? I realised I spent 40 years going, I'm not sporty. And this year, I was reading Carol's book again, and I thought, well, what if I just don't do enough sport? Right? You know, maybe if I did a bit of exercise, I might become a bit more sporty, right? So that's really the idea around mindsets and how we label ourselves as one thing or another thing, and how easy it is to be binary about things. And then Barry Oshry, who's one of my many heroes, which is about seeing systems, and especially how to see organizational systems when you are inside the system, and how exciting and powerful that is. So you're inside a system, you can see the system, and you can sort of step out and even watch the system in quite a dispassionate way, which is how things like Gestalt and other approaches work as well. And one of the things I think is fantastic as systems engineers is that you can choose to connect and disconnect from the system that you're in at any time, just by being aware that that system exists. Okay. Deming. How many of you are familiar with Deming's work? Yeah. Put your hands up again, please. Those of you who are, have a little look around at the hands that didn't go up, would you please? Right. Conversations, ladies and gentlemen. Come on, it's ridiculous. The guy's only been dead 20 years. Okay, so Deming is one of my many heroes. And for those of you who don't know about him, basically the idea of a system, the idea of variation, so we don't pay attention to every dot on a graph, right? Unless we're in leadership positions. So actually looking at the pattern of data and understanding, okay, well, what's going on here? And is this special cause, this event, is it special cause or is it common cause? That's really important. So as we learn, and as we've seen very recently in the UK, we don't always pay enough attention to data or what that could mean. So being able to see data and pull out a story and make some good decisions as a result of that is a really powerful thing that systems engineers have to offer society. Okay, so variation, psychology. Now, Deming never pretended to be an amazing psychologist, but through the work of Toyota, which Kevin mentioned, so he was one of the many people who went to Japan after World War II from the United States, and the work they did about understanding how people think, and that, guess what, we don't all think in the same way. Amazing, okay? So some people are more divergent, some people are more convergent, some people think, by what they see, hear. I mean, we've all got different ways of being, of thinking. And none of them, I don't believe, any of them were more superior than any others, but we should at least notice that we're all different and we behave in different ways and we believe different things. And so psychology is a really important part. In fact, it was only due to a coin landing a specific way that I ended up doing engineering rather than psychology. So I don't know anybody else who's decided their career through a coin toss, but it seems as valid a methodology as anything else. My mother was brilliant. She said, just toss the coin, and if it lands the way and you think, yes, that's great, that's right, then that's good. But if it lands and you think, oh no, then you still have the answer. right? It's a brilliant way to make decisions. Okay. Learning, continually learning, the idea of knowledge. And by knowledge, more and more and more, we're not meaning content anymore. We're meaning about understanding how to find the answers about things, and how to ask great questions, and how to be curious. But also, the experts are quite important as well, okay? And it's actually important to have some knowledge, okay? And then the fourth thing is obviously appreciation for a system. So there is no such thing as a system, is there? Right? There's no such thing as a system, correct? And there are also infinite systems as well, yes? Right? Okay, it's very obvious, really. There is no such thing as a system, and there are infinite systems. It's all in the eye of the beholder, okay? So just being appreciative that systems exist, or that we think there are systems, and there are also systems of thinking, which I'll share it with you shortly. Most of this talk is about systems of thinking, and the idea that you can really think about what system of thinking you want to use when you do your thinking. Meta-thinking, okay? So Deming, one of the many wonderful things that he wrote, what is a leader? And we've talked a lot about leadership over the last few days. As I use the term here, he said, the job of a leader is to accomplish transformation of an organization. He possesses knowledge, it's a theory of knowledge. He himself has been transformed. He has personality and persuasive power. And how may he accomplish the transformation? And Deming was an engineer originally. I came from the background of statisticians, so he went in through the variation window rather than the psychology window to the system of profound knowledge. But basically, this idea that we have to transform ourselves in order to be useful agents of transformation. And similarly, you can't be involved in transformation and not transform in some way. Okay? You can't be involved in change and not change in some way. Not if you want to be really effective about it. So he was talking about transforming an organization. I'm going to show you 3 steps that he suggested for how you would transform an organization. And I'd also invite you to consider yourself as an organization and how you might choose to continue to transform yourself. So I don't know what version you're on. I'm on Emma Langman 7.4 currently. Okay, but how you choose to transform and change yourself over time and what that does for you and in service of others. So 3 things, he says. We must have a theory, in a way that's a purpose, about why it's important that the organization or ourselves as individuals should be transformed. So what will be the benefit if I become a better person, or if my organization becomes a better organization, or the search of excellence, or whatever you want to call it, and how to become excellent. I'm sure I will never attain excellent, but no one will know, because none of us know what excellent Emma Langman would look like. So we just keep evolving in that direction of better. The second is that we feel compelled. And I've had some really interesting conversations with many of you over the last few days around how it feels when you're in tension with your organization, when you really want to do the right thing for your company or for your customer, but it doesn't feel like everybody wants that, and how stressful and upsetting that can be. But how actually we're driven. Well, guess what? Most people at work are feeling the same way. We feel compelled to make things better. I do believe that that's a human thing, that we want things to be better, even if we're misguided or misunderstand or have a narrow concept of what better means. There is a human wanting to make things somehow better. Okay, and the third, I mean, he was writing from sort of the 50s onwards. He's a practical man or woman, and has a plan about how to achieve that. And I'm very much working on a specific plan at present about how I want to transform or how I think I could transform into another version and a better version of myself than I currently am, which I'll share with you. So the theory. Okay. Why would transformation be important? So we cannot just transform anything without being transformed. I do really believe that. So looking at systems, what Oshry says, how many of you know of Barry Oshry and his work? 1. So you've got to have a lot of conversations, right? Okay. So Barry Oshry basically came up with this idea of the power lab. And what happens is they take a group of people into a experience where they get assigned roles within that organization. So you become a top, so you're in charge. You're a middle, so sort of bureaucrat manager level, which is where many of us are. It's certainly where I am. Or a bottom, or a worker. Okay. And he puts them all together in the room, along with a lot of psychologists and other safety things, and they have to do some stuff. And inevitably, as soon as you say to somebody you're a top, you're a middle, or you're a bottom, they start to behave in specific ways, right? Okay, so this is Barry talking at INCOSE in California a couple of years ago about this idea. And so tops start to get overwhelmed by the complexity and responsibility that they have to deal with, okay? The bottoms just get miserable together, okay? So, and it's quite a nice, comfortable place. I don't know if you remember your first job, but it was brilliant because we all agreed that all the management were incompetent, right? And none of us were management, so therefore it was a very comfortable place to be. And then there's the clients who sort of get neglected while all this shenanigans is going on inside the organization, okay? And then there are the middles who are trying to deal with all of that and getting torn apart. So anybody, is that familiar at all at any point in your career? Okay. And it happens, it's a system dynamic, it happens. There are certain things we can do, and the main one is for middles to spend time together. That's the main one. Because we get torn apart by everything that's hitting us, so it becomes really easy to not spend time together. And when we don't spend time with people, what happens? How does the relationship go? Badly, okay. So we start to get suspicious, okay? So you've come into different silos, and we start to see, oh, well, you know, that group over there is trying to do something that's going to undermine our group over there, and they're trying to steal our resources for this project, and you know, and they're backstabbing us, right? Oh, look at those people backstabbing us, and also them over there don't even know what they're doing, but you know, they seem to be paid more than we are, so they're clearly not adding the value that we do. So we come into this them and us space, and we become suspicious of everybody else. And the key thing that Barry Oshry teaches, if you remember one thing from this talk, is spend time together. And so when we spend time with other people, we start to get to know them, we start to understand their paradigms, their view of the world, how they think, and it increases the amount of trust that we have. And then when we start to trust them, guess what? We want to spend more time with them. Okay? So you get this simple systems dynamic. You spend time together, it builds your trust. You spend more time together, it builds more trust, and so on and so forth. So that's one of the key things. And the easiest thing that the tops can do to make their lives easier is to pull middles together rather than command and control and separating it all out. Okay. Right, mindset. Carol. Fixed mindset basically says you're born with what you're born with, you're sporty or you're not, you're intelligent or you're not, you're good at speaking or you're not, and that's just how it is, okay? And many of us, particularly those who do well academically, which I did, we decide fairly early on, well, I'm an intelligent person, okay? Which is a really dangerous self-limiting belief, okay? Because in the event that you discover that you're an intelligent person and then you don't manage to achieve something, right, that's really frightening. So best not to try, don't you find? Yes, best not to try, just in case I discover the limits of my intelligence. And a lot of the work that Ruth has done around learning power, when I first was assessed on that, turns out, surprise, surprise, that I wasn't very resilient and I wasn't very curious. Right? Well, why would I be curious? I didn't need to be curious. I knew the things that I needed to know. Why would I want to find out new things? It might shatter my worldview. It might mean all sorts of scary things. Whereas a growth mindset is the experimenter. So it's the baby trying to learn to walk. It's the toddler kind of thing. Where you try things out, you fail. Addy, as we say in the middle, addy. And you just get up and have another go. And on you go. Okay. So there's a simple picture around them. But have a real think around that and be aware also that one of the things Carol shares is that we might have a growth mindset in part of our life and a fixed mindset in another. Okay? So we might be willing to take risks when it comes to something we do in our personal life, but not in our work life. Or perhaps we might be willing to believe that a relationship can change with our spouse, say, but not with our mother-in-law, okay? So have a think about your fixed mindsets and growth mindsets. Feeling compelled then. So in the 7 transformations of leadership that Talbot and Rooks work, one of the things that they did was to pull together a whole load, thousands and thousands of managers answered open-ended questions. And from that, they started to get what they call the action logic for different people at different stages of their life who think and behave in slightly different ways. And that's how they interpret their surroundings. If you like, it's their sort of systems sight, their systems antenna, the filters that they're using, and also how they react when their power is challenged. Okay, so the dark side. So those of you who are into things like Hogan's dark side or SDI, is a similar kind of concept to that. 7 action logics, and I'll run through them very quickly with 3 stories of my own. So the hero's journey. How many of you are Tolkien fans? Okay, so there's the Hobbit living in the village, minding his own business, right? And along comes this call to adventure. Okay. Also, Dorothy, Wizard of Oz, minding her own business, along comes a tornado, call to adventure. So there are archetypes of heroic journeys that you will see in almost any major movie or book that you encounter in life. Okay. There's also archetypes for the whole romantic genre thing as well, which I hate as much as my husband. We have a lot in common, and many of those things are things that we both don't like. So archetypes, there's a call to adventure, and this is what I'm offering you right this very moment, especially if you're suddenly thinking, oh heck, have I got a bit of a fixed mindset about myself and my abilities and what I can do and what I can't do. So you're just minding your own business, living in the world of the known, and then something strange happens, and there's that opportunity to be curious and leap in and go on an adventure, which is what you guys have done this week. Okay, to find out new things, discover new things, meet new people, and so forth. In order to be successful at that, we need some kind of mentors, wizards often. So here comes magic again from John Holt. Wizards, and we need allies who will come on that adventure with us, who are often as ill-equipped as we are, and that kind of makes us feel like we might be vaguely capable. Okay, one of the places in the UK that we spend time with allies is in the pub after work. Okay. In the Middle East, we do that having coffee before the day, because we don't have pubs in Kuwait. But there is definitely a piece of spending time with people who you sort of feel are a bit like you and are facing similar things to you. Then you go on a journey, meet a nemesis. The allies often disappear. You may have noticed that happening at work as well. Right? So we agree something before we go in the meeting, and then all the allies suddenly go, and you're the one holding the pen, right? Okay. And then there's the nemesis. We survive, and then we come back as a transformed person back to our original life and sharing something that we've learned on that journey. And it goes round and round again. So my mum never called these things breakdowns. She calls them breakthroughs. I think that I've had several breakthroughs, never needed medication, but twice needed someone to talk to, breakthroughs on my life, which were absolutely these moments where I had to kind of shed the older version of myself and go into the new one. At work recently, we just moved to Office 365, and it's a similar sort of thing. We're sort of shedding the old IT system and moving to the new one, and people are going on that whole emotional journey about software and how their emails look. Change is a strange thing, isn't it? Would you mind moving desk? You're kidding. I've sat next to Bob forever. And who will look after the plant? I know. So anyway, it's all very interesting. So just when we think we're safe and we're in our normal world, round we go again into the extraordinary and unknown world, if we choose. And it's exciting and it's terrifying and everything else, but we come through it as a different person at the end of that journey. So, Julian Simcox, Charlie Dalrymple, and the nemesis I've kept in grey. In fact, I tried to Google him recently, and he's basically disappeared from the face of the earth. He's an independent consultant. He doesn't make any money. So, Confucius, he say, he who waits long enough will see head of enemy float by. Okay. So basically, when I was doing my first job, and I was doing my PhD at the same time, because I just needed to be with other people more, I went to find out about Deming in the engineering library, and guess how many books we had about Deming in the engineering library at that time? None! Correct. So I went over to the social sciences library where I found about 2 of those. So I went into this thing, sort of pre-internet days, called the Deming Electronic Network, and I became a Densian. Yes, I belonged, okay? And Julian Simcox, turned out he lived near us, and he lent me all his books around Deming, and he introduced me to Talbot, and he became my mentor. Also, he's a foster father. He was a respite foster carer. And that's one of the many reasons why my husband and I ended up adopting our children. So just be aware of the impact we can have on others through a conversation over a cup of tea and a biscuit. And then Charlie was my ally. Basically, I had finished university. I played that game brilliantly. So those of you who are really good at this game, especially if you realise it's a closed system and there are only so many people that can get a first, you can basically out-psych people in the front of the exam hall, right? I had another friend who did even better than me, and she used to keep a graph on her wall of all her revision hours, and then she made sure everyone saw it. So, yeah. So we would really out-psych each other. There were certain groups of people that cheated, like the Malaysians would study together and help each other, which is just not cricket, is it? Right? So, and those of you who still work in academia may also find that perhaps it's not as collegiate as we might think it would be. Okay. So gradually I learned to move from being an opportunist who kind of, I would size people up, you know, what they got to offer. Okay. I'd given up looking for the best friend, because I had thought you would have a best friend through life. And then I was realizing different people offer different things, and I became a little bit, pretty calculating. Yeah, I don't think I would be friends with myself at that stage. And I didn't cheat, but things like in the final project that we did, some of the people in the team didn't really contribute very much, and I didn't see why the hell they should get a good degree, right? So I put my initials on every page that I'd done. That sort of thing, okay? I didn't address the behavior or deal with that. I just made sure that I was fine, okay? You may recall yourself early in your life doing stuff like that. Diplomat, then I went to work, learned to make friends, realized that actually there's something to be said for teamwork. Had an amazing boss, still friends with him now. And he was actually the best boss I've ever had, which was unfortunate, starting with the best boss. I now have the second best boss I've ever had, so that's pretty good. But still, I would just make sure I fitted in and avoided conflict. And then became an expert. And that's when I became particularly brittle. So it was about, I've got my PhD, I know about this stuff. And I became particularly brittle and quite difficult to work with. But I was convinced that wasn't my fault. It was just that everybody else was being unreasonable or jealous or whatever. And I was quite emotionless. So moving from that, what helped me through that was meeting Julian, who helped me to realize that you can change and transform. And then later, meeting Nigel Clemens, who's a very good friend of mine, who unfortunately died 2 years ago. He was in the rail sector, one of the best systems engineers the world has ever seen. And he could answer every question, and this is how it goes. Here's a question. He goes, it depends. Right? Now, when you're an expert frame, and you ask someone, and they go, it depends, you could think, well, you're just stupid. Right? Anyway, Nigel was incredibly intelligent, and this guy, James, also was an ally of mine at that time. And through that period, I learned to understand things like uncertainty, complexity, different people. And I gradually moved from being an expert to an achiever. So achiever is where you start to be able to manage other people, really. And a lot of the stuff that we teach on MBA courses and standard leadership development courses is that stuff about, other people are intelligent too. Oh, okay, you can learn to delegate, and you don't have to micromanage and all that kind of stuff. Okay, all right. So I moved on through that in my 20s, really. And then by the time I got to sort of my early 30s, I was really trying to balance personal and company logic and what are we trying to achieve here? What are we trying to get done? And I used to get really frustrated because I wanted to be having the higher level conversations, but I wasn't senior enough. And it wasn't about pay or anything else. I just couldn't get in the right room with the right people. So that's more about self-awareness and also being able to challenge objectives, challenge goals. And one of the best things that I think companies can do is to have good conversations around objectives and alignment and what are you trying to achieve. Not so that we can hit people when they don't achieve them, but so we're clear about it. And so that people can challenge you and say, well, actually, why would we want to do that? I don't really get it. Because actually, maybe it's not a good idea, or maybe we need to articulate it better. Third and final journey I'll share. Chris Bush, who Ruth introduced me to years ago, as an expert, I had been wheeling a wheelbarrow of knowledge around me my whole life, okay? And I would basically go, well, Deming said, right, okay, and in any opportunity. And so what she did in the middle of a leadership program that I was delivering with them at Waitrose, this is when I was now self-employed at this point, she said, would you please stop bringing the dead white men into the room? Okay? Ouch, right? I don't know what the other men were doing at the time the books were written. Perhaps they wrote them in other languages, and English is dominated unreasonably, perhaps. It's a personal theory. And I don't know what else, but it just happened to be that's who I was dragging around, okay? She said, I want to know what you think. I was like, whoa. Okay, well, I've not been conditioned for this. No. And then she said to me, which shook me to the bone, Emma, this is not about what you know. You are not here on this leadership program because of what you know. That is not what we're paying you for. Okay, so why am I here, Chris? You're here because of who you are. And my exact response, I remember I was in the Marriott Hotel in Bracknell, in the bar, and my exact response was, that can't be enough. So, she said, it is, that's why you're here. I had a cry, went and had a little lie down, came back down, glass of wine, all fine, new version. Major reboot. And so that's when Louise and I, who's my ally there, we started to get into internal consultancy and helping people to be influential within the organisation. So if you're an internal consultant, how to be as influential as the greatest external consultants. And if you're an external consultant, how to help those internal consultants to have the maximum impact that they can on their organisation. That's one of the most rewarding pieces of work I've ever been involved in. So, to wrap up then, I'm kind of heading, I've been pretty well through the strategist piece. I like conflict, it's fun. Helping people to work through conflict is fun. Change stuff, easy peasy. I mean, we can have a conversation about that another time. Change is again, it's fun, just understanding where people are from, listening, understanding the different paradigms. It's exciting and energizing. And I'm trying to work now towards the Alchemist. These are a couple of strategists, Naomi Timperley and Kevin Spacey, but the idea that it's beyond your organisation, really. It's about how do you do stuff that helps society. But you know this is INCOSE stuff, right? This is INCOSE basics to be strategists. So Alchemist then, being able to talk to everybody, being able to engage everybody, being able to simplify key ideas, and being able to tell fantastic stories. So one example here of a CEO who realized his organization was moving too slowly, so ended up started wearing a jogging kit to work as a symbolism that we just need to move faster as a company. So how we use metaphors, how we use stories is part of the alchemist, the wizard, the magician's way of seeing the world. So that's what I'm working on. And the key to that is about networking with people at your level. So people who are no longer worrying just about how do I survive in this organisation, how do I work up, but what are we doing together as society? So that's where I'm at now. Mentoring is an essential piece all the way through our development, I believe. To be a mentor or to be a mentee, how we develop and grow, and also peer-to-peer mentoring, holding each other to account to very high standards for what we're trying to achieve on behalf of society and the ones that we love. So I do a range of daft things. I'm on the lookout for some more mentors, but this time not kind of like the guardian wizard mentor, but other people like me who want to do cool stuff. That's what I'm at. And I have to do this work thing as well. And luckily, I really enjoy my job, and I'm competent, which is also nice. But working together on how can we move society forward? And that's why I'm really very attracted to INCOSE and what I've seen of you guys this week again. So I will finish there. There's other bits around cultures of organisations and how we set ourselves up to learn, how we grow. But I do believe that you can plan to develop and transform yourself in the same way that you can plan to develop and transform an organisation or a country or a continent or the whole world. I think it's totally achievable, and I think systems engineers and the way that you guys think and the values that you hold to be true are a really key part of that. So I invite you to step over the threshold onto your next hero's adventure, and I'd like to thank you very much indeed for the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon.